Hello chess friends and welcome to Jozarov chess channel and welcome to a very important game that happened in the European Chess Club Cup in 2024 that's going on now in the beautiful town of Vrnjačka Banja in Serbia. We have here the amazing game between Dmitry and Andreikin against Gukesh, and this game is really very important because Gukesh in this tournament has a huge opportunity to become the world's youngest grandmaster of all time to reach 2800 rating points so far. This record is held, as I mentioned before, by Alireza Firuja. Alireza gained this rating with only 18 years, 5 months and 3 days. Now Gukesh could break this record if he continues to win in this event for about 2 weeks, so he could be now the world's youngest grandmaster to reach this epic rating. Also, what's worth to follow, I would say, is also the rating progress of Arjun Ergaisi. Arjun Ergaisi and Gukesh were, of course, the heroes of the Chess Olympiad in 2024, where they also gained many rating points. But Arjun played, I think, a solid draw today against Alexander Predke. He didn't lose so many rating points. He's still only 2 points far away from reaching this really incredible rating. Let's see now what happened. Did Gukesh manage to do it? Did Gukesh gain enough points to finally reach this 2800 rating mark? So let's dive now into the game with the white pieces. Here, Dmitry Andreikin opened with move d4. Gukesh response was knight to f6, knight to f3, e6, and after move c4, we have now the move d5. We have now transposition into the queen's gambit decline, and now after move knight to c3, the 3 knights variation, Gukesh goes now into a very popular opening into the Ragozin defense against the queen's gambit decline. We have now queen to b3, which is already very interesting sideline by Dmitry Andreikin. Very I would say not so often played. Usually you go into this Alekhine variation with the move queen to a4, hitting the bishop. You go many times in the exchange variation, bishop to g5, bishop to f4 are options. So queen to b3 maybe a rare sideline, but very interesting line, which immediately forces now a reaction by black. Here Gukesh plays, I think, the best move, c5, immediately fixes now the bishop, and of course puts more pressure here against the center. D takes c5, and now knight to c6. You don't have to, of course, pick up the pawn immediately on c5 because you'll take it afterwards. First of all, good development here by Gukesh. We have now bishop to g5, queen to a5. Here we have huge pressure around the square c3, but now bishop to f6. And this is a move that I think already equalizes the game for black, but of course also it messes up here after move d takes c4 and queen to c4 and g takes f6. It messes up here the pawn structure in front of black's king. What's the good part, I would say, about this line from black's perspective, that you have equalized. There's not so much complicated that's going on now, I think, on the board. The position is not so dangerous. White gave up already the bishop pair in the early stage of the game, and here after rook to c1, Gukesh gets finally the pawn back and has gained, I think, really a pretty equal game. We have now queen to h4 by Andreikin, and now king to e7. Interesting move, but again, the best move here by Gukesh, simply securing the king in the center of the board, because you have really a nice here wall of your pawns. The king is really fixed here. The king cannot be in danger by any minor piece activity, and the good part about this pawn structure is that it's always restricting any minor piece activity of white on this square. So really normal here stuff here by Gukesh. We have now the move g3. Andreikin is finally trying to develop the light square bishop, and now a very important choice now again by Gukesh. Bishop to c3, rook to c3, and now queen to b4, going into the fully endgame stage, equalizing the game. I think the preparation by Gukesh here was pretty fine. It's, I think, a solid way to go into this game. You want, of course, to get easy drawish positions with the black pieces, and then maybe in the next round with the white pieces to put more pressure against your opponent. So here again, after queen to b4, knight to b4, I would say again a pretty equalish position now for both sides. We have now the move a3. Gukesh fixes now the knight on d5. We have now rook to c1, and now comes the first, I would say, already critical moment of the game. Here Gukesh plays a theoretical novelty with the move e5, and actually this move is, in my opinion, not so good. The problem about this move is that you leave already a huge weakness in your camp. It's, of course, the f5 weakness. A better way here is to proceed with bishop to d7, normal development, and after bishop to g2, we would reach actually a common position, a very often position that has been played in the Ragozin defense really many times. So if you watch now the database, there are about 20 games in this same position. So I think it's a well-known and also well-prepared line from Black's perspective. Black is pretty solid. White cannot get the rook on the 7th rank. Black can always compete on the only open file, on the C file. The bishop can be developed on an even better score. So many options, but I think in any of these lines you go into drawish positions. But after rook to c1, Gukesh makes the first huge decision, I would say, in the game, e5, which leaves now the f5 square really weakened here. After bishop to g2, here Andreikin immediately prepares a tactical threat with knight takes e5, f takes e5, and then picking up the knight, which of course would gain a pawn here for white. So that's why bishop to e6. Gukesh protects now the knight, but now after knight to h4, you see now this becomes now huge positional problem now for Gukesh. Again, nothing dramatic is going on. Nothing is lost, of course, for black because of one square weakness in the position. But from this point on, I think it's very easy for white to play the game. White has not so much to calculate. I think white can play normal moves, white can play normal development, and black is now basically on the defensive side. The engine gives here only a slight edge for white, but I would not really love to now play this game from black's perspective. White is of course much I would say easier to play again here from white's perspective. So here after rook from a to c8, Andreikin simply castles, skill of course connects now the rooks. We have now rook to d8 and now bishop to e4, and you see now because of this messed up pawn structure, because of this weakness on f5, now Gukesh has several weaknesses. First of all, the pawn on h7, the weak square on f5, and suddenly it's not really a position that's pleasant to play from black's perspective. What should you do? If you try here knight to b6, then bishop to h7 could happen, rook to h8, and of course white is again much better. So after bishop to e4, that's why Gukesh tried here h6 to somehow keep this pawn on the board. And you see now the issue when you pushed here the pawn to e5. Imagine this position if the pawns still would be here on e6 in potential line. After bishop to e4, you would still have this opportunity to push the pawn on f5, so you could really lock out your opponent's light square bishop out of game. So now it's not working because Andreikin has occupied the f5 square, and now of course knight to f5. Why not? Of course, Andreikin occupies this weakness, attacks now the weak pawn on h6, and it's really now an easy game here to play for white. We have now king to f8. If you try bishop to f5 here, then bishop to f5 leads now into a fully endgame stage, where of course the bishop, when the position is stretched on both sides, when you have pawns on both sides, it should be much better. Again, of course, nothing spectacular is going on. It's not like black is losing the game also in this line, but in a really top GM endgame, imagine this endgame played by Magnus Carlsen with the white pieces. I guarantee you Magnus would win this 9 out of 10 times for sure. So it's really, again, not a good position for black. So after knight to f5, that's why Gukesh tried king to f5. The issue here for white is that you cannot pick up this pawn immediately. Gukesh probably calculated this line after knight to h6 that this is not so good, because then knight to e7 can happen, and now the knight could be out of game. You're trying maybe something like g4 to somehow get your knight finally into the game, but then rook to d2 attacks now both of these pawns on the second rank, and finally black is again back in the game. So that's why here very interesting choice. Even if you try, for instance, bishop to b7, even if you try to grab more pawns, it's not even working because of this line, king to g7. Then, as we mentioned, the knight gets trapped, and here finally black should be much better. So that's why here Andreikin didn't play knight to h6. He didn't want to risk anything so far. After king to f8 that Gukesh played, Andreikin played the correct choice. He plays now brilliant, I would say. Rook takes c8, and this is the way to go, because after rook to c8, now knight to h6 is working, because now in the sequence of knight to e7 and that we have seen, and you're threatening maybe to play the move king to g7, now g4 is working, because now the rook cannot occupy the second rank like in the previous line, and now suddenly white is perfectly fine here. White will get the knight back into the game. We'll probably have a double pawn structure here, but we'll continue the game with an extra and pass pawn here on the h file. So really amazing play so far by Andreikin. After knight to h6, Gukesh tried knight to b6, and now d4 here by Andreikin. Probably slightly better way to proceed for white is here to play rook to d1, occupy the file that's open, of course, and black cannot control, of course, the c file because black cannot have access to the c2 square, cannot, of course, occupy then also the second rank. So rook to d1 may be slightly better way to proceed, but then f4 is also perfectly fine because Andreikin noticed some tactical problems of the king on the f file, because if something clears, then the king could be endangered. We have now knight to c4 by Gukesh, attacking now both of the pawns, at least some kind of control play on the queen side, but now f5. Great choice by Andreikin, which leaves now this bishop really out of game. The bishop is now on a passive square, and now knight to g4. Andreikin continues where he is better. He is, of course, much better on this side of the board. Gukesh tried king to e7 to protect this, but now bishop takes b7. We have now rook to g8, attacking now the knight on g4, and now h3. Great move here by Andreikin, protecting now everything, keeping here the advantage on the king side. We have now knight to d6 by Gukesh, attacking now the bishop. Here the bishop drops back to d5, and now bishop to f5. Here finally Gukesh gets a pawn back, but now rook to c1, and from this point on, again, Gukesh has lost the battle on the only open file, on the c file. If he competes, of course, here, then the rook could be off the board, and finally this pawn could march, and also on this side of the board, white will also create a passer. So again, the position would be stretched all over the board for black. So after rook to c1, Gukesh tried bishop takes g4, h takes g4, king to d7, and now rook to c6. Good choice by Andreikin. He's not even protecting his pawns on g4. What Andreikin is trying to do here, and it's a great endgame technique what he's doing here, he's trying to get two connected passers. And what Andreikin is trying to do, he's trying to give up both of the pawns on the g file. He doesn't care for his pawns. Meanwhile, he's trying to grab this one and then create two mobile passers on the queen side. So then the knight will again have a tough time to beat this outside pass pawns. Of course, with the support of the bishop on this side of the board, with the support of the rook, white could be even winning in a potential really endgame here. So after rook to c6, Gukesh went into this line. We have now rook to a6. Great move again by Andreikin, giving up even the pawn on g3. After rook takes g3, king to f2, and now after rook to h3, mission accomplished here for Andreikin. The material is equal, but these are not two passers like white has here on this side of the board. Black still has a tough time to create any passers here because these pawns are still colliding with this pawn on e2. So from this point on, it's again really beautiful game now for Andreikin. So he has now, I would not say completely winning position, but again, he doesn't have to calculate so much. Gukesh has, I think, here has to find the optimal ideas in order to survive somehow in this endgame. After rook to a7, rook takes a7, we have now king to c8. Of course, Andreikin is pushing now the pawn. Rook to h4, rook to a6, king to c7, and now a5. Why not? We're pushing simply where we have the advantage. We're trying from white perspective to do the move b4. So far it's not working, but if b4 happens, maybe then afterwards also b5. When the pawns maybe get even to the 6th rank, then the game should be really over here for black. So that's why Gukesh is battling somehow on the 4th rank, and now Gukesh makes another mistake, I would say. He plays now the move rook to d4, which seems tempting, which seems again like a logical idea because you're attacking the piece, you're forcing a reaction by your opponent. But the better choice is you have to push in one moment your own pawns here to create at least something. Then in the potential line like rook to c6, I wanted to show you a huge difference in lines. Memorize this position when the pawn is already on f5. Now after move rook to c6 and king to d7, you're trying maybe to do something like this. Then knight to e4, a bishop to e4, rook to e4. Here in this particular position, the rook is already on e4, and you have already your pawn advanced to f5. What Gukesh did is after rook to d4, he allowed here, first of all, the check. That's now the only move that gives here white still advantage. So again, Andreikin plays the optimal choice here with rook to c6, king to d7. Now again we have a similar idea, knight to e4, the line that we have seen previously, but after bishop to e4, rook to e4, and rook to b5, notice now that the pawn is not on f5 like in the previous line. In here, Gukesh tried to battle somehow with rook to a4, and now Andreikin makes a huge endgame mistake, which again gives here Gukesh the equality, which gives again Gukesh the opportunity to somehow make a draw in this rook and pawn chess endgame. Here, maybe here Andreikin was maybe he tried to play on this common ideas. When you play endgames, you're trying of course to get your king closer to the action, but now in this line it's simply not working, because you don't have to play with your king when you have two connected passers. So Andreikin created himself a great strategic advantage in the endgame stage. Now he should have simply just pushed the pawn b3, rook to a2, and now b4, and now the pawns are rolling. That's now the good part here. The pawns are rolling and they're almost unstoppable. As we mentioned, if Gukesh would have already had the pawn on f5 somewhere like in the previous line, maybe he could do something, but not like this. Now the pawns are rolling and this should be now completely winning endgame here for white. But instead of this move b3, what Andreikin did, as I said, he tried to play also normal ideas. When we start to learn chess, then of course one of the main endgame techniques is of course to include your king into the game. But sometimes we miss this obvious ideas with b3, b4, and here after king to f3, Gukesh plays a move that I think broke billions hearts in India. He had now the opportunity to play the move king to c6. You have to now stop the pawn storm that's coming on the queen side. You have to get your king closer to this side of the board. And then in the potential line, I don't know, rook to b6, you play king to c7. Black can lose, of course, this pawn on f6, but then white will also lose this pawn, so maybe you can try b4, but now you're pushing the pawn on f5. Look at this, and in this potential line, white king could be cut off, and only with the rook and these two pawns. And when the king is in front of this rook, that's now the huge importance of this endgame. When the queen is here on the 7th rank, white cannot promote these pawns because white cannot push these pawns further. But what Gukesh did after king to f3, he played now, as I said, the move that broke billions of hearts. He played now king to e6, and this is not working because now Andreikin goes with king to rook to b6, attacking now the king. And now after king to d5, the king is now behind the pawns. We have now the move b4, and you cannot get the king in front of the pawns. You cannot get the king back into the game. You cannot even attack now the rook here on b6 with potential king to c5 move. F5 by Gukesh, the move that we have seen previously, should have been played much earlier in the game. Now f5 is simply too slow. Andreikin simply pushes the pawn for, again, you don't have access with your king to the c5 square. Rook to a3, Andreikin simply steps back. Why not f4? The pawn storm on blacks is simply too slow on this side of the board. Andreikin pushes the pawn. We have now the move f3. White doesn't even care what you do on the king side, simply pushes here the position further. a7, f5, and now after move b6 in this particular position, Gukesh resigned. So really great endgame technique by Andreikin. Of course, if we play something like this, then the rook is coming here. You will promote, will grab all of these pawns here, and it's of course a thematic win for white. So with this loss, strange thing happens. As I said, here Gukesh lost several rating points. He still has some chances maybe to do something in this event, but look at this. He's now he's having now 2,788.5 rating points. Arjun Ergaisi could be now the new one that could reach 2,800 rating points. He's only 2 points far away. Maybe with a win in the next round, Arjun could do it. Of course, Arjun and Gukesh were the heroes of the Chess Olympiad in 2024. But I think whatever happens, maybe Gukesh will not become the the youngest to become 2800 rated, but he will get his 2800 rating for sure in his career. I surely believe it. So of course we know that also Gukesh is playing in the next World Chess Championship against Dingler, and so maybe he's not playing his optimal choices here in this tournament because he doesn't want to reveal his opening theory for the World Chess Championship match. But okay, we'll see what will happen. But in my opinion, Gukesh and Arjun Ergaisi are 2800 rating players for sure. So a little bit sad story, but we don't want to, of course, undermine Andreikin's game. He outplayed here Gukesh in any way. A great game with the white pieces, playing on a tiny little sort of positional advantage when you mess up your opponent's pawn structure and then you go slowly into the full endgame stage. Really great thematic game, great thematic also endgame here by Andreikin, so deserved win today in this beautiful chess tournament. So okay, and I hope that you enjoyed this game. I really enjoyed it a lot. Interesting stuff here played by both sides. If you want to see some other games that we have covered by Gukesh, Magnus Carlsen, and all of the other top grandmasters, check out our Comte chess games. Here's the link of our playlist, and if you want to see even sharper, more brutal games, check out our Comte chess games played by computers. And if you like this content, hit the subscribe button. See you soon with some more videos, and what do we say in the end? Chess is the best, of course.